My sister was sleeping with my husband, and when I found out she had the nerve to demand that I move out with my 2 kids, I agreed, saying fine, but the kids stay. When she realized the real reason why, she rushed out of my house bawling her eyes out. I'm not sure how to start or explain this, but recently something happened with my husband that has left me feeling hurt, embarrassed, and confused. It's been weighing heavily on my mind, and I haven't been able to bring myself to talk to anyone about it yet. For some context, my husband Ken is 7 years older than me. We met when I was 21 years old, and at a really low point in my life. My ex used to be abusive and manipulative, so when I met Ken after my breakup, I found him to be different, or so I thought. He was. The perfect boyfriend to me was the complete opposite of my ex. He would plan all our dates, was a good listener, and knew what he wanted in his life. He told me very clearly that he was looking to date someone who he could eventually get married to. Since he was older than me, I was not sure if I should continue to date him, as I was not sure about marriage. But as we continued to date, I slowly kept falling in love with him. Ken doesn't have any parents as he lost them in a car accident very early on in his life. I think this was a big reason as to why he always craved having a family of his own. When we started getting serious, I introduced him to my family, and my parents absolutely loved him. Ken was charming and confident, and I could see that my dad immediately liked that. Even my older sister Jamie had no negative comments about him. I remember very distinctly that Jamie had commented to me that Ken was a great catch. During this time, my sister was single, so I would often invite her to join us whenever we went out. It was great. The 3 of us always had a blast together, and I loved seeing them get along so well. There was never a hint of anything more than friendship between them. Eventually, my sister started dating her boyfriend Fred, and we all continued to hang out as couples. While our boyfriends weren't exactly best buddies, they got along fine, and we enjoyed spending time together as a group. However, I would notice sometimes that Ken would get really riled up while talking to Fred. Fred was basically a carefree and easygoing guy who believed in crystals and astrology. Now, there's nothing wrong with that since he and my sister bonded over it, but Ken was very opposed to it. He would tell me things like how my sister deserves much better than a lunatic or how Fred was a weirdo. I would try to let it slide. However, once the 4 of us had gone out for dinner, nowhere fancy, and usually we would each take turns to pay. It was Fred's turn, and he didn't have the money, so he asked my sister to pay for it, telling her that he would pay her back. Hearing this, Ken openly mocked him, saying how a real man never lets his lady pay and how he could take care of Jamie much better than him. We all froze in shock, and I stared at him with disbelief. Ken tried to backtrack, saying he meant that she was a sister to him since he was my boyfriend and could take care of her like a family. I shook my head but kept my mouth shut at that time since I didn't want to make things more awkward for us publicly. Later, when I confronted him, he insisted how he had grown close to my family and cared about them like his own. He told me that Fred needed to do better, and I asked him to, but out of their business. I told him that he had no right to speak that way to my sister's boyfriend, and I wasn't going to let it slide the second time. Since then, Ken has kept his mouth shut around Fred. Ken continued to have a good connection with my parents throughout our dating phase, so it was no surprise that when he proposed to me, I said yes. I did have butterflies and felt anxious about my decision, but I did believe that Ken was the one. We had a grand wedding, and I have to say that Ken left no stone unturned in giving me the wedding of my dreams. My parents did contribute partially to our wedding, but Ken showed up the major parts. All my friends and cousins were really envious of my wedding and told me how lucky I was to have found an older guy who had his shit together. Throughout all my wedding planning, my mom and Jamie were very much involved in making sure that everything went to plan. We went on a honeymoon to Hawaii, which was a place I had always wanted to visit. One day, Ken and I had a wonderful time, and everything seemed to be going smoothly for us. The trouble only happened after we came back home. Ken was at work, and I was working from home. I work as a graphic designer for a foreign company, so I have the luxury of working remotely, from anywhere. There was a knock on my door, and I thought that maybe it was the delivery man. I opened it up to see a pregnant woman standing on my doorstep. She told me she was looking for Ken. I told her he wasn't at home at the moment, but I would be happy to take a message for her. She looked at me intently, biting her lips nervously. I could feel like something was wrong, so I asked her if she was okay. The woman started to cry and asked if she could come in. I was a bit apprehensive, but she genuinely looked pregnant, and I didn't want to be cruel. I let her in and gave her a glass of water. Once the woman had calmed down, she asked if I was married to Ken, and I nodded. She then went on to tell me that she had no idea about this when she slept with Ken 4 months back. My stomach dropped as I stared at her and feel the ground beneath me shaking. She told me she is pregnant and doesn't know what to do since she doesn't want children. She told me how she wanted to abort but didn't have the courage to do so. Hence, she had tracked down my husband from his LinkedIn page. She told me how she had followed him back from his office to our home yesterday evening but couldn't let herself knock on our door since it was a Saturday today. She assumed that he would be home and had come to confront him. Unfortunately for me, my husband was working, hence I was the one who opened the door to her. My heart felt like it dropped into my stomach. I couldn't process what I had just heard. The man I was married to, the man I had supported through thick and thin, had betrayed me. I rushed to the bathroom trying to make sense of it all. How could someone I thought was sweet and kind do something so awful? I had been nothing but supportive and loyal throughout our entire relationship. It felt like a punch to the gut. I started to hyperventilate, and everything felt like a bad dream. The woman kept crying and pleading with me to calm down. I felt sorry for both her and me to be in this predicament. I called my husband and told him that he needed to come home immediately. I don't know whether it was the way my voice was shaking, but he did leave work in the middle of the day to drive back home. When he entered the house, his eyes fell on me, sitting with the woman. Immediately, I saw his face drain color. I knew then, without him even admitting that the woman was right, my husband had indeed cheated on me. The love of my life had got another woman pregnant. Tears ran down my face as my husband came up to me and got down on his knees. He started to tell me how this was all a mistake and he never meant to hurt me. I kept asking why he would do this to me, and he told me that it was just a one-night stand and that it meant nothing. He then went on to explain how 4 months ago he was too stressed out with our wedding planning and met her in a bar when he and his coworkers were out drinking. She approached him and he found her attractive. They hooked up in the bathroom, and that was that. To her credit, the woman agreed with him and told him how she thought she would never see him again until she found out she was pregnant. I shook my head and informed Ken that his one mistake was now going to cost us because she is pregnant with his child. At that moment, I wished I was never married to him. My heart was in pieces. Ken shut his eyes when the lady informed him that she was pregnant with twins. He then asked her, since she was just a stranger to him, so there was no guarantee that it was even his children. The lady agreed to do a paternity test. She told us how she didn't want the babies or any child support. She had been thinking about giving up the babies, but decided to inform him before she did that, since he had a right to know. She told us that we could decide and let her know whatever we wanted, and then she left. The next few days, Ken continued to plead with me to not leave him. He kept telling me how that woman meant nothing to him and that he wasn't in the right mind. There were so many justifications that he came up with, which all boiled down to him saying that this would never happen again. I felt like I was walking through a fog during those days. I would stay curled up in my bed for days because I didn't know what to do. I did want to leave him, but at the same time, I felt like I would slip into depression. Everything felt different and broken. I could still remember how devastated Ken looked when the woman told us that she would be giving up the babies for adoption. Ken and the lady did end up getting a prenatal paternity test, which proved that it was indeed his kids. Up until that time, I had a bit of hope that maybe she was wrong, but the pain returned after I saw the results. Ken sat me down and informed me that he had always wanted to be a father and how this should be a blessing for both of us. I looked at him pissed as he continued to explain how we should think about adopting the babies from the woman. Hearing this, I started yelling at him, asking him if he had in fact gone crazy. I told him that there was no way that he was going to suggest something so ridiculous to me. After that absurd suggestion to adopt the babies Ken had fathered with another woman, I stood in silence for a moment, trying to process everything. My head was spinning, and a knot of anger formed in my chest. I slowly rose from my chair, feeling the weight of every word he had said. It wasn't just the betrayal that hurt me, although that was already devastating, but the fact that he seemed to treat everything with an unbelievable coldness. As if it were just a detour, a small complication that could be fixed if I agreed to raise his children with another woman. How could he even think that was acceptable? You've got to be kidding me, I said, my voice trembling, filled with disbelief. He looked at me with those regretful eyes that I used to think showed sincerity, but now they just seemed empty. You betrayed me, destroyed our trust, our marriage, and now you want me to raise this woman's children as if they were my own? As if it's that easy? How dare you suggest something so absurd? Ken tried to approach me, maybe to console me, but I took a step back, raising my hand like a shield. Don't you dare touch me, I shouted. I can't even look at you, let alone listen to these lies. Love, please hear me out, he said, his voice choked. I know I messed up, but that doesn't mean our love is over. I want to fix things. I love you. And these babies, they're innocent in all of this. We can still build a family, just like we always dreamed. A family? I laughed, but it was a bitter, cold laugh. You destroyed our family, Ken. You destroyed everything we built. And now you want me to accept this betrayal as if it were some hidden blessing? Don't make me laugh. These babies are not a blessing for us. They're living proof of your disloyalty, of your lack of character. He stayed silent for a few seconds, perhaps realizing the depth of the damage he had caused. But then, like a true coward, he tried to shift the narrative, placing part of the blame on me. I was overwhelmed with all the wedding preparations. Everything was happening so fast, and I felt pressured. You were so focused on the details, on superficial things. I felt neglected. It was a mistake, yes, but you also pushed me toward it. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. You're blaming me for your betrayal? For your inability to stay faithful? To be honest, my voice was raised now, echoing through the house. I was planning our wedding. I was doing everything to make it perfect for us, while you were out in bars, betraying everything we had. And now you want me to believe this is my fault. He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off, furious. I never pushed you into another woman's arms. That was you. That was your choice. A selfish, disgusting choice. And now you want me to just erase that? To forget? To raise these children as if they were mine? You're out of your mind, Ken. He tried to argue once more, but I was already fed up. Do you know what's worse? It's not even just the fact that you slept with another woman. It's the fact that you think you can manipulate me into accepting this. That you can make me clean up your mess, as if it's my responsibility. You betrayed me, broke our trust, and now you want me to fix everything? You're not the man I thought I knew. You're a stranger. And I'm not living like this anymore. Ken stood frozen, maybe expecting me to change my mind. But I was resolute. My body trembled with rage and indignation. You ruined everything. And the worst part? I don't see how I can ever forgive this. You ended our marriage, Ken. It's over. He then began to plead. Please don't leave. Don't give up on us. I know I made a mistake, but I'll change. I promise I'll be the man you deserve. We can get through this together. I stared at him for a long time, trying to find any hint of sincerity in his words, but everything felt empty. He had crossed a line that could never be undone, and I knew that if I stayed, this betrayal would always stand between us. Get through this? I muttered, my voice filled with contempt. You destroyed any chance of getting through anything. You made a choice, and now you'll have to live with it. I turned my back on him, my anger boiling inside me. I knew what I had to do, even though it hurt. I'm leaving this house. I'm going to pack my things and take the kids. And you can stay with your mistake and its consequences. Ken tried to argue once more, but I was already heading toward the bedroom, starting to pack my things. My mind was made up. There was no turning back. I deserved more than to be treated as a solution to his problems. I deserved respect, something he had clearly lost for me. As I closed the bedroom door, I heard Ken collapse onto the floor in the living room, crying. But I didn't care anymore. I was tired of crying. It was his turn to deal with the destruction he had caused. And as for me, I would leave that house with my head held high, ready to start my life anew, far from someone who had never truly valued me. After leaving that house, my days became an internal battle. The pain of being betrayed consumed me, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling of humiliation. I tried to focus on the kids, on work, on anything to distract me, but every night before falling asleep, the thought haunted me. Ken not only betrayed me, but also tried to blame me. And worse, my sister Jamie was there, like a silent accomplice, betraying the trust we had built since childhood. They both hurt me deeply, and despite all my efforts, I realized I would never get over this. I needed something more. I needed justice. No, I needed revenge. The weeks that followed were chaotic. My friends and family knew something had happened, but I didn't have the courage to tell them the truth. I avoided their curious looks and worried questions. After all, how could anyone understand the level of betrayal I had faced? But the more I kept this pain to myself, the more it grew, like a beast eager to be unleashed. Then one night, as I scrolled through social media, I saw a post from Jamie. She was smiling next to Fred, pretending her life was perfect, as if nothing had happened. As if she hadn't slept with my husband, trying to destroy my family. That was the final straw. Something inside me exploded. I wasn't just going to move on. I wasn't just going to forgive and forget. They didn't deserve my compassion. I wanted the world to see who they really were. And I knew exactly how to make that happen. I grabbed my phone, went straight to my social media, and started typing. To my friends and family, it's time you all knew the truth. This is the story of my husband Ken's betrayal and my own sister Jamie. While I was planning our wedding and building a family, the two of them were sleeping together behind my back. They tried to destroy my life, and now it's time for me to tell the truth to everyone. I typed nonstop, spilling all the details. From the first suspicions about Ken to the day the pregnant woman showed up at my door. I didn't leave anything out. I told everyone how he cheated on me with another woman, getting her pregnant with twins, and about the ridiculous suggestion to adopt the babies as if that would fix everything. I exposed everything, every sordid detail, every lie. I included photos from our wedding, pictures of him with my sister, and even the name of the woman who had tracked him down through LinkedIn. I left nothing out. When I finished, my finger hovered over the post button. I knew that from that moment on, there would be no turning back. But I also knew I was far beyond the point of return. Ken and Jamie had destroyed my life, and now it was my turn to destroy theirs. With a deep breath, I pressed post. The first reactions came within minutes. Comments of shock, anger, and support started pouring in. People I hadn't spoken to in years were sharing the post. Soon it went viral. Everyone was talking about the scandal. I saw mutual friends of Ken, coworkers, and even people he barely knew leaving comments or sending private messages. Everyone wanted to know more, wanted details. I didn't need to say much more. The full exposure was there for the world to see. Ken tried calling me several times that night. I ignored every call. Jamie also tried to reach out, sending desperate messages, begging me to take it down, saying I was ruining her life. But I didn't want to hear anything. She had already ruined my life, and now it was time for her to reap what she had sown. In the weeks that followed, things only got worse for them. The stories spread like wildfire. At Ken's job, his coworkers started treating him with disdain. I heard from a mutual contact that he was called into a meeting with his superiors, who no longer trusted him because of his damaged reputation. The scandal affected his professional image so much that they started cutting him out of important projects. Eventually, he lost his job. Jamie, on the other hand, didn't escape unscathed either. Her social reputation was completely destroyed. The friends she valued so much began distancing themselves from her. Even Fred, who until then didn't know about the affair with Ken, broke up with her immediately after finding out the truth. She was left isolated, without friends and without a boyfriend, trapped in the web of lies she had helped weave. Meanwhile, I watched it all unfold from afar. I didn't feel guilty. On the contrary, there was a quiet satisfaction in seeing the truth spread. Ken and Jamie had underestimated me. They thought they could get away with it, but I proved them wrong. They would never be seen the same way again, never regain the trust of the people around them. Even the woman who got pregnant by Ken sent me a private message, saying she was sorry for everything and horrified by what he had done. At least she had the decency to stay away after all the chaos, giving up the babies for adoption as planned. And as for Ken, he tried to ask for my forgiveness, tried to argue that I was taking things too far. But for me, there was no such thing as too far. I simply told him that when he destroyed our family, he opened the door to all of this. Now, he and Jamie were alone. No job, no friends, and no one's trust. I had done what needed to be done. Revenge may not heal all wounds, but it brought a sense of justice that I had longed for. I moved on, stronger than before. I knew that from that moment on. I controlled my own narrative, and I would never again let anyone make me feel powerless. As for Ken and Jamie, they could spend the rest of their lives trying to rebuild, but one thing was certain, they would never again have anyone's respect or trust. And I was sure they deserved exactly that.